We are talking about vaccine passports, right? Where do you stand with that? If this country was to introduce vaccine passports to, let's say, enter our favorite pubs, restaurants or bars, gyms, etc., would you be for or against it? Do you feel that this would fringe on your autonomy, on your right to decide what you would like to do with your life in this country? Or do you think that it would secure a national sense of security regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, which we are still in? Give me a call tonight, 0800-731-2000. Now, these passports, have a certain technology around them, but the best person to talk to about that would be someone who understands it much more than your poet presenter boy Lionheart. So tonight we decided, let's have a conversation with the CEO of VST Enterprises. And joining me right now is the incredible Lewis James. Lewis James, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hi.
Now, listen, we have already started off the show, talking about where do people stand with it? Is it ethical? Is it the right thing to do? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the technological side, if you don't mind. Okay, now, first and foremost, QR codes. For, let's say, the people who don't understand what QR codes is, could you give us a little breakdown of what QR codes is?
Yeah, so a QR code is the unsecure little square barcode that you see on posters. So you have to get in close proximity to them to scan them, and they are slow to scan as well, but they're not secure because they're free to the world to code how they want to. So if you use the wrong reader, it actually exposes all the data behind it. And that's one of the reasons why we designed the VCode. And the VCode is end-to-end secure. It doesn't expose the data. And you can scan it at 2 to 3 meters away.
Wow. So now a VCode, right? So the difference between a QR code and a VCode is the safety around the data, right? And the fact that you can do this as a distancing tool, right? You wouldn't have to stand in close proximity to a person to use the VCode either. Is that correct?
Yeah, so VCode has been purpose-built for ID and security, whereas QR codes were built for car tracking.
Interesting. I wasn't aware of that. Now, I think we do live in a technological age where some people may still be a little bit behind on, the ins and outs of how to use our phones regarding this passport feature. And let's say, for instance, there is a couple or elderly person out there who says, I don't really want to walk out with my phone every day. What would be the alternative solution to that? Because, there are some people who still don't agree with walking around with a vaccine passport. What would you say to that?
So at V Health Passport, we've actually made it for all ages and all tech capabilities. So you can actually get a print-off certificate or a lanyard, or you can just put it onto a season pass if you need to. But we can also have children in there, etc. But it's not just a vaccine passport. Ours has different pass displays. We don't believe that having a vaccine makes you immune. So we have different vaccine colours. You can have a red vaccine passport if you test positive. You actually have a grey vaccine passport if you've only had a vaccine. We don't give you that green pass unless you've had a test. So we're promoting testing.
So Lewis James, now, knowing that you could almost codify or color codify, what a person has done in terms of whether they had COVID before, whether they've tested positive or not, do you think that this is one of the measures that we're going to be having, throughout the rest of, let's say, this decade, for instance? Because some people say this is going to be here for a while now. Maybe people are going to have these vaccine passports in the next 5 to 10 years. Is that probably the necessary step that we need to take in this country to re-ascertain a certain sense of security?
I think everything needs digitizing. If you take America, for instance, where state to state, their health systems don't talk to each other, digitizing primitive passes is what needs to happen. And a lot of the clinics that already did travel vaccinations are asking to put these onto our passports. So in the maritime industry for cruises, etc., they're already saying, can you put malaria vaccines on, yellow fever vaccines, and have a different colour to distinguish with what vaccine they've actually had on it. And the benefit is that the users are in control of their data. It's not a state-owned passport, and they get to share with who what they want to.
So my question would be, in the beginning of this pandemic or during one of the lockdowns that we entered, many people were concerned that, in the front of, let's say, a supermarket, there was going to be security guards. And maybe this is a question that is going to be in the minds of people who are still worried about, us entering that type of London, that type of a UK environment. Should we be expecting, security guards outside shops and checking our vaccine passports? Is that the kind of world we're going to be expecting in the next couple of months to years?
If you take places at the moment, there are people stood outside to make sure that you wash your hands and do social distancing. And I think if you could have some sort of method to get in there where you don't have to social distance, but you feel comfortable that everybody's been tested, I think that's where we want to get to. And I think as COVID starts to phase out and this platform is in everybody's hands, then it would be a good pandemic prevention tool in the next 5 to 10 years if anything like this breaks out again.
Well, Lewis James, I think, this is a great thing to start discussing on the show. If you are out there and you have an opinion pertaining to the QR code and VCode, do give me a shout today and let's have this conversation with Lewis James. I've got a text in here that I want to read you, my friend, okay? The text is from David Brown. Now, David Brown is texted and saying, I would be happy to have a health vaccine if it's secure with my personal details. QR codes are not secure, but if there was a better solution, I would feel more comfortable. We need to be explained more by the government on what they are proposing. That is from David Brown there. So clearly, Lewis James, there is a desire to have a certain sense of security around, what information is going to be out there at people's disposal. What sort of security could you give to people regarding this VCode? And again, maybe it is a bit difficult for us to get our heads around it, knowing that we don't understand the technological background of it. But what advice or what details could you share regarding the VR code and its safer measures pertaining to our data?
Yeah, so if you look at QR codes, all you need to do is search QR code fraud, and you've got things in Forbes magazine, you've got reports of all of the other QR passports across Europe that have been hacked because they're so easy to clone and a tag, which means linking to different places. So it's not just a case of what part of your data can get stolen from a QR code. It's what data can be stolen when you scan another QR code, because it can be linked to other places, obviously, because it's an open source, free system for people to code. Whereas VCode being closed, it means nobody can create the code unless they've gone through the system, and nobody can decode the code without going through the system. So you always know that anything you touch in the system is safe, and none of the data can leak out of that. So we've spoken to the government in the UK and said, wouldn't we like to put our best foot forward using a British technology that has been proven and certified to be end-to-end secure, rather than putting ourselves at risk using a QR code?
And what were their response to that? What was their response to that?
The response is that they do see the technology is the best, and it is the only thing that could make a global system where all of them can get the relevant information securely.
So my question to you then, Lewis James, right, is how long has this technology been out for? Because we've been using QR codes for quite a while now, if I'm correct. How long has the VCode been out there?
So VCode is the first code of its type to be made for smartphones. So we designed this in 2012.
Okay.
And we launched it in Las Vegas in 2014. But we've been working alongside governments in ID, anti-counterfeiting measures for some time now.
And I think this would be a potential, great connection to the fact that, travel is a key thing regarding, the alleviation of the restrictions here in the UK. Would these vaccine passports be, another method of using our general passport, or would there be a connection or disconnection between the two? Would we have to still have our physical passport, or would we be able to use both of them at the same time?
So that's one upshot of having a VCode, is that it can do many different things based on who's scanning it. So the VCode could be your health pass and your normal passport at the same time.
Wow.
It could be your health pass and a payment method. It could be your health pass and your club card for a supermarket. It could be your health pass and a season ticket. Whereas with a QR code, it's a one use case system. So you'd need 15 different QR codes if you wanted to show your health pass for a football stadium if it was on a QR code. Whereas our system is one for all. Now,
I know you said that, it's front-ended secure, right? It's end-to-end secure. But potentially, let's say in the next couple of months, I would like to know, from you a bit more, about how long you think this would take to roll out. But primarily, should people still be worried then by putting all of that personal information there, potential bank details, payment details, passport details, household details, health details into one secure place? Is that still not a concern for us to put all of that into one safe, secure place?
So it doesn't actually work that you put it into one place. It has one place where you can show it to somebody else, but it actually pulls the information in from the other system. So let's say you've got a banking API, which is a digital bridge between the bank and our platform. We don't actually see any of that data. We just show it to the person that you need to show it to.
Aha, so it's like a digital middleman that takes the information that is required at that time.
We're a secure bridge for it, yeah.
Aha, okay, that makes a lot more sense now. So let's say if the UK, gave the go-ahead here, Lewis James, how long before, we see a vaccine passport?
So we already issue vaccine passports and we already issue test passports, and we've been doing so since last June. And we're actually in 80 different countries at the moment with over 300 test centres registered as well.
Okay. But in terms of deployment, let's say national deployment, how long do you think it would take for us here in the UK to see this be a normal feature of our day-to-day life?
So if the government gives the green light, we could be on as quick as this week.
Wow. This week potentially. And so are we on let's say a time frame or a countdown now in terms of the response to actually green light that?
So the government themselves have the trials, and they've got an ethics committee that is going to reach a decision at the end of June, and that will put the guidance in place of where we're going to use health passports in the future. But we have been given the incentive to set up travel corridors with some of our other country partners.
That is very, very interesting information. Thank you so much for that. So let's say then in the next couple of weeks, potentially, we may be using, and am I correct in asking, this would be via a smartphone, right? A tablet or smartphone?
Yeah, so it is smartphone enabled if you want to have the full experience of scanning people, scanning venues and being scanned.
Right.
But you can also log on to the internet and you can print off your own lanyard or certificate as well. So you don't actually have to have a smartphone. And that's one of the differentiators of our technology to others, where they are smartphone-only platforms.
Very interesting information. There you go. For those of you who aren't, a smartphone user, you can still print off the code and wear it in a lanyard wherever you go to have that access via the VCode. Listen, Lewis James, before we, politely let you go, ethics have been, part of the main debate regarding using vaccine passports. What do you think about people who oppose the ethical choice in terms of using them?
With the ethics, again, it is you use it for what you want. And we have bear that in mind. In the system, we do actually have a vaccine exempt button. So if you're pregnant, religious, or you don't have the vaccine because you've got allergies, your medical officer can put vaccine exempt on the front of your pass, and you can still carry a pass with a negative test.
But in terms of, deployment is one thing, but in regarding of UK citizens' rights, do you feel that everyone should be we had a caller previously, right, calling a good friend of ours called Stuart, and Stuart was saying, everyone should be forced to have the vaccine and everyone should be forced to have a vaccine passport. Where do you stand with that? I know, you're kind of in the business of it, but do you feel like, citizens should be forced to have the vaccine and the vaccine passport to secure the UK's safety regarding COVID-19?
I think everybody has the moral right to be safe. I don't think you have to be forced to have a vaccine. I think you could have a test, have a pass, and you could share the fact that you are COVID negative and find comfort in the fact that you've shown that as well. Right.
Well, listen, Lewis James, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight, being our leading cyber expert here on the show regarding the vaccine passports. Please, if there's anyone out there who wants to find out a bit more information about, how this works in the VCode, where can you direct them to?
So it's v-healthpassport.co.uk.
Perfect. Listen, thank you so much for joining me, my friend. You have a brilliant night, and hopefully sooner or later we will see what the government's decision is regarding this. You take care. We'll speak to you very soon.
Thank you.